some local update and also the current advice, please. Sorry, you need to unmute yourself, Bruce.
Okay, do we have the slides for this?
I believe so.
Okay, I'm not seeing them. Okay, here we are. Okay, well, thank you all. I'm Bruce Laurence. I'm the Director of Public Health. And I mean, first thing I would say is Bath, North East Somerset and most of the Southwest certainly not been unaffected by COVID at all. We've been very affected, but actually rather less than the rest of the country, or most of the rest of the country. Our rates of cases and deaths having been about half that. So we start in a good place. We need to keep it that way. We need to get even better, of course. I was asked me to talk a bit about the R number because there's a lot of interest in that. So the R number means nothing more than the number of cases, the number of new cases that each case infects and gives rise to. So if the R number 1 is when each case infects one other case, and that's steady state. And if R goes above 1, then there's a chance of an increasing outbreak and a spiraling outbreak. But R on its own doesn't mean that much. If, for example, I mean, if all our cases in the Southwest were one person in Penzance and they then infected 2 other people, our regional R would go up to 2. And if in London 1,000 people, 1,000 cases all infected one other person, they would stay with an R of 1. So you also have to think about the total number, which is the N. And as I've said, N in the Southwest is good by national standards and has been coming down, as have other parts of the country. And then Y, and by Y I mean, well, why are we seeing those numbers? And we have to take into account the distribution. So if all the cases are an outbreak in a hospital or a couple of care homes, that's a very different situation to how we see the community than if the cases are spread with a lot of small community outbreaks. So you need to know a little bit more than just the R, although it is important. So I wanted to talk just for a couple of minutes about the broader context. All the experts agree, they don't agree on everything, but they all agree that we are treading a fairly fine line between controlling the outbreak and it letting rip again. So we have room for manoeuvre, but we don't have much room for manoeuvre. We have to be very careful still. And that's why the opening is cautious. And that's why some people are saying it's too fast, while others are saying it's too slow. And there are opposing pressures to do everything we can to keep the infection rate down, which are very legitimate, of course, and pressures to do everything we can to give us a normal life and to bring our life back to our businesses, our schools, our communities. And that's equally legitimate. So both those pressures are playing out now. And what we're seeing is the result of that in action. And it's difficult because there's a lot of unknowns in all of this as well. Then the next thing I would say is everything depends on everything. So how we deal with schools, shops, homes, how we are on our beaches and on our public transport, that all adds up. And if everything is done as carefully as possible, we can open up quite a lot of parts of life again in a way that won't let the epidemic burst forth again. But if it's not in any of those places or not done well enough together in all of them, we are at great risk still. So I think, you know, the centre of Bath is one part of a very big picture, the centre of our other towns. And people's individual behaviours matter so much. You can have the same rules, but how people interpret them, how cautious they are with how they behave, with where they go, with who they meet, that all really matters. So the results that we see don't just come from a set of government instructions, they come from how the whole population interprets them. And of course that will vary. And part of our role in the council is to try to encourage people to really take this all very seriously. So what will the government do? I don't know. I don't have any inside track on it, but what I do know is that they are well aware of this fine line we are on. So I think what they will do generally is release some of the pressure and then wait and see what happens, wait and see how people react, how they behave, and wait and see what happens to this famous R number and what happens to the numbers of cases. And if that remains good, they can do a little bit more, they can go the next step forward. And if it doesn't, we may not be able to, or even go back. So I think that's the essence of what I will say on that part. And then the last bit is it is a lot about the basics, a lot about the basic hygiene that we all operate, the washing of hands, the social distancing, the rules that have been applied to different workplaces, and just generally keep in any situation, imagining that everyone around you has a very small chance of infecting you or being infected by you, and acting in that way without getting completely paranoid. So that was sort of my public health introduction, and I hope that gives a little bit of the context as to some of what you're going to hear now.
Thank you very much, Bruce. I think it's really helpful that you've explained the significance of the R number. You know, there's a term that's being bandied around quite a lot, and I think it's very useful to have it explained so we can all properly understand what it means and the context that we should be referring to it in, and also for explaining, you know, how it's the importance of, you know, of doing everything that we can to avoid a second sort of wave of infection, and, you know, the consequences that might have. And I guess, you know, just to reiterate what you said about washing hands, social distancing, follow the guidance, really. It does lead me to a question that has been raised, which is from Councillor June Player from Westmoreland. I'll just read out the question for you, which is, what more can we be doing to help in building the confidence of residents to show them that it is safe to venture out to the shops, as many people remain scared or concerned about leaving their homes?
I think it's a real question. Some people are really scared, especially those who feel vulnerable, and will take some time to regain their confidence. And I guess some of the same answers showing that, well, firstly, the background that the Southwest, you know, it is not a plague pit at the moment. There are people who can give you the illness here, but you know, it's under reasonable control where we are, and show that we're doing everything that we can collectively as businesses, as public sector in Bath, as schools. We're doing everything we can to minimise the risks to people so that they should feel confident to go out if they also play their role in distancing and in protecting themselves. But it's tricky. I think some people will take a lot of encouragement after, you know, this very, very strong stay home message. So, you know, I can understand that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bruce. Which actually leads me quite neatly on to my next panelist. So Councillor Joanna Wright. I think now would be a really good moment to perhaps give a bit of an update on the, you know, the measures that we put in place to help with social distancing and to, you know, try and help protect our residents' health.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Joint Cabinet Member for Transport. I just want to inform everybody who's watching this and taking part that you can go on to the chat and ask questions as well while we're involved in this conversation with you today. So in the last few weeks, we have had significant changes going on within Bath and hopefully North East Somerset in the next few weeks as well. What we've recognised is that everybody does need to maintain this social distance, and central government has asked local councils across the country to make sure that we can implement safer spaces for people so that they can maintain social distance. And we've recognised that within Bath itself, where 90,000 people live, as opposed to the 180,000 that live within Bath and North East Somerset, that we have to look at areas where there is going to be significant footfall and narrow pavements, and make sure that we can create spaces where people can begin to feel a bit more confident about going out and about, so that they can go and start using the local shops. So we have identified 15 locations across Bath, and we have begun to widen pavements and take out parking. Now, I'm aware that some people don't think that this is the right thing to do, but we are quite clear, and we have been told by government that this will be a significant help to lots of people to help them get out and about. And we have three lovely little diagrams here that show 3 areas where we are going to implement pavement widening: Westgate Street, Upper Borough Walls and Milsom Street. In the short term, Milsom Street will be changing its parking regime. You will now no longer be able to park up and down Milsom Street from 10 till 6 during the week, and only buses on the whole will be able to move up and down Milsom Street. And this will allow people to be able to walk up and down Milsom Street and be able to stand, if they have to, on the road and feel safe. We also know that central government has encouraged as many people as possible to not use public transport. And this is a huge change. The usual double-decker bus used to carry approximately 75 people and now will only be able to carry 20. So what do we do if that is going on? We can't get everybody onto buses anymore in the way that they used to. And if we aren't move out of that and then everybody is to get in the car, we're going to be in a real problem, not just with air pollution, but with the fact that we'll come to gridlock. So government, and it has literally come from Grant Shapps, and they want everybody to, where they can, cycle or walk where possible. And I know throughout my year to date of being cabinet member, there's been quite a lot of antagonism about cyclists and thinking that they're not the best way of moving around. And I would say that every time you see a cyclist, if you're in a car, if you could slow down and give them some space, they are enabling people who are in cars to have space to move around. So it's really important that we take this opportunity to rethink our methods of connectivity and how we move around and how they impact other people's lives, because that can make a difference to how people feel. So I recognise that some of the changes we're going to make might not seem sensible to some people, but we have been told by government to do that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joanna. I have a couple of questions actually which were submitted before the webinar started, so I will refer to those questions. But as Joanna has pointed out, if you have any other questions that occur to you, please put them through on the function, and then we will try and cover those as best we can in the hour that we have. Okay, so Joanna, I've got two questions, both from Robin Kerr of FOBRA, which is the Federation of Bath Residents Association. So the first question is around car usage. So if the usual number of people are attracted to the shops when they open, city centre streets will become very congested because of this proposal to widen the pavements, particularly as COVID-19 infection risk will discourage use of public transport. So how are you going to persuade shoppers to leave their cars outside the city, especially in the east where there is still no park and ride facility?
So all visitors to Bath travelling by car are encouraged to keep their vehicles outside the city centre by using one of the 3 park and ride sites. So the park and ride sites are still in operation, and we would still like people to use them. Social distancing on the buses is still going to be maintained. So we encourage everybody to use those. We have a park and ride at Lansdowne, and certainly that is accessible to people on the east of Bath. You just might need to take a little longer journey to get to one of those park and rides, and we would encourage you at all times to use the park and rides. If you are unable to use the park and rides, there are car parks in the city, and you can go there and park your car and then get out and walk. And we would encourage people as much as possible to not use on-street parking, but to go to car parks and the park and ride.
Okay, thank you, Joanna. There's another, so I've got 2 more questions, but one is again from Robin Kerr, which is around the restoration or retention of parking. So it's quite understandable that parking in the city centre may have to be curtailed during COVID-19 to allow shops to be reached while observing social distance. However, suburban minor shopping centres such as Moorland Road, Chelsea Road and Lark Hall work in quite a different way, existing through and depending on short stay access of cars for those unable to get to the city centre. And the point he makes here is this access needs to be preserved or they will not thrive. So I guess it's asking for a comment really, less than a question.
So when the decision to make Moorland Road and Lark Hall more accessible to social distancing and to make sure those spaces were safe, I reviewed them with officers. particularly Moorland Road, we talked to the traders, and the original agreement was to take out all the parking, and we realised that that was not going to be useful for an awful lot of traders and how people could access those shops. So we haven't done that, and we have listened to traders. In Larkhall, we again looked at the situation, and there are 2 car parks in Larkhall, behind the Co-op and in the new Oriel Hall, and both of them are within 10 metres of the local shops. So I don't think that the decisions we have made have impacted significantly on people. More people will not be able to park directly outside a shop and just fall into it, but that also means that narrow pavements will then be wider, and people who need to social distance, who are a lot of people who are vulnerable, who Bruce Laurence has talked about earlier, who are afraid to go out, have been sitting inside and indoors for months now, and they need to get back out. So we need to work together as a community and make sure that the areas are provided for everyone. And this might require all of us to just change our habits a little bit, park a little bit further away, and walk 10 to 15 metres more than we ever have before. And I don't think that's a big ask. It's a real requirement of all of us to work together as a community and to come together and support each other.
Thank you, Joanna. So the last question actually for you at this moment is from Paul Rolls, and the question is, my question is this: I understand that pavements have to be widened for C19, and I'm all for that. However, it takes a very large amount of parking spaces around. So it takes up a very large amount of parking spaces around the Kingsmead area, and many of us pay my permit for that privilege. With less spaces, can the permits be extended for free for central permits until the pavements return to normal size?
So with the introduction of the lockdown in March, all parking charges were paused, and all parking permits valid on the 25th of March were provided with the free extension of 1 month. A resident's parking permit gives the holder the right to park in a valid bay. It doesn't guarantee a parking space with further parking available within the central zone. Additional parking is available to central zone permit holders within Charlotte Street car park between 5 p.m. and 10 p.m. the following morning. So although there is some parking lost, there are other alternatives.
Thank you, thank you. And I think this all still plays part back to this idea that we've all got to play our part. So yes, there will be some, you know, extra, shall we say, challenges or some slight barriers or obstacles in our paths. Sorry, that's quite literally. But you know, at the end of the day, this is all about protecting the, you know, public health and doing our bit to make sure we can prevent a second wave of infection. Okay, I'm now going to move on to ask Councillor Paul Crosley to comment on, you know, on the public realm and the changes that are being put in place.
Thank you very much, Chair. We're putting in place a lot of changes to the public realm, and we're moving as fast as we possibly can as a council. But at present, we are, as are every other council, bound under the Highways Act 1980 to follow due process. And so therefore, the idea of getting more tables and chairs out has to follow this due process in looking at pedestrianising areas outside businesses and on pavements, as well as extending into roads where some suggestions have done. And we had to pay, as a public sector duty, to the Equalities Act 2010 to ensure we're not discriminating against access needs and visual impairments and wheelchair users, including parents or grandparents with pushchairs with young kids in. So we understand perfectly the desire for more outdoor tables and chairs, and can I assure the audience, I am pushing our officers as much as I possibly can to make sure that we do this as rapidly as possible. But we are working behind closed doors. We are in constant contact with our MP representatives about this, and we're working regularly with the government, expressing to government ministers the problems and issues we face in meeting their needs, their requirements, and our requirements and our needs to get people out and businesses up and running. So we're looking where we can do this across the city and across the towns of our area. But the three key messages are: one is our first phase of bringing our town centres back to life is looking at how we encourage local people, and that means not just residents of the city centre, but people who work in our city and people who come in from outside the area to shop. So we're looking at those needs before we look at the needs of tourists, but that will also come as well. But the first stage is getting people in who live, work and visit here on a regular basis. And as part of that, we're looking, as Joe said, about how we walk and cycle more, because obviously if we're taking space out for the car and putting space in for tables and chairs and pedestrian access, then we do need people to look at how they travel in to the city centre. And finally, you know, as other people are going to be, I'm sure this message will come across many times tonight, we are in a public health crisis. So our first priority has to be at all times making sure that we don't do anything that tips the balance adversely on a public health message.
Thank you very much, Paul. And I'd also like to now introduce Allison Herbert from the BID. Now, the BID is a key partner that works with the council in the city centre. I'm sure Allison will be able to expand a bit more on the role that the BID play, as well as perhaps comment on what she has seen happening and the role that the BID has played in actually, you know, making our high streets safe.
Hello. So I don't know if BID stands for Business Improvement District, and we're part of a big family of organisations. There are over 300 in the country. We all do slightly different things, but we have some unifying elements, which is the way we're funded. So the BID in Bath is funded by about 650 businesses who are committed over a 5-year period to make a small additional contribution, which is then pooled, and that gives us the opportunity as an organisation to do some things that individual businesses probably wouldn't be able to do on their own. And we are very much directed, the BID and my team, by the businesses that we serve. So I'm really pleased that I've been invited. It's a really good symbol of the fact that we're working really closely with the council. I'm working with a huge variety of different departments on what feels like an awful lot of different projects, and we're really trying to make sure that in all these conversations the business voice is being represented, and I have to say so far that has been very successful. So just this afternoon we were talking to Joanna about the road closures, and she was explaining that one particular road that one particular business would like to be closed additionally hasn't been closed because of the impact it would have on the deliveries to a number of other businesses. So just to reassure you really that in an incredibly short time scale, normally these things are carried out with months of consultation. We're collectively trying to find solutions that are the most reasonable and the most sensible, so that Bath remains a safe and welcoming destination for all of the people who are the customers of the members of the BID and the residents of the city and the people who work here. So I think it's a very challenging time, but I think that we are doing some really great work together. And I don't know if you've been out in the city today, but we did a lovely event a few weeks ago where we called it the Big Bath Welcome Back, and we've gathered lots of ideas and we're about to move forward on some of those. But there was a real kind of consensus in all of the people who participated that they wanted to see rainbows all over the city, and so we've designed social distancing stickers for Bath which include rainbows. So do look out for them. At least, you know, our safety messages can also be slightly more cheerful. So anyway, thank you for the invitation, and obviously hope to answer any questions that people may have about the work that we're doing.
Thank you very much, Alison. I'd also like to now ask Sergeant Jonathon Raisey, because I think one of the questions that will be in people's minds is, you know, the role of the police. You know, will there be things that will need extra policing? What are the powers of the police, you know, during this crisis? And, you know, how will their role help work with all the work that we're doing? to keep people safe.
Absolutely welcome. Thank you very much. Obviously, the police's role through COVID has been to try and ensure social distancing and responsible behaviour by the public. A lot of that is through education rather than fines. So we do have obviously a fine system open to us. That won't affect many things within the city centre itself. But as always, I'll have my PCSOs and PCs within the city centre. So that's 11 PCSOs, 3 PCs at present, who'll be out on visible foot patrol and cycle patrol as well, to reassure people who are concerned about cyclists and how they interact with the public that are walking in shared spaces. We'll be very much looking to engage where anyone isn't following the 2-metre rules, especially outside shops. But as I say, what we're not intending to be doing is issuing fines. It will be to educate, to talk to people and hopefully make them understand what they're doing. I know there's a little bit concern about the street community and whether begging will be more prevalent. And again, that is something that we will do outside of COVID legislation, so that there's already legislation in place to prevent begging, to prevent people sitting in doorways and causing antisocial behaviour. We're doing a large bit of work which was planned to have happened in February or March anyway, but from the 15th of June till 1st of July, I intend to be sending my officers to visit every single retail shop in the city centre, offering our support, what we can do if people are witnessing situations of begging, antisocial behaviour, people sleeping in doorways, etc. We have a very tight relationship with a number of the charities such as Julian House and DHI, as well as Baines Council, for looking at the issue of homelessness, and official figures are that everyone has been housed that wants to be housed within Bath that has come from the street community. There are 7 people sleeping rough at the moment, but that's because they've refused alternative accommodation. So it will be very much a case of trying to get the message out to shoppers, to visitors, to businesses, that people are on the streets, are choosing to be on the streets. Obviously, there's a number of reasons why they're choosing to do so, but there is food available, there is accommodation, no one is on the streets because they haven't got that provision open to them. And I fully understand why some people don't want to take up those offers, but again, members of the public shouldn't be feeling harassed into giving money. And again, one of the things we're going to be very vigilant towards is anyone that is taking advantage of the fact that shoppers have to queue up outside, and using that as an opportunity to approach them and asking for money, and making people feel as if they need to hand over money to those people. So we will try and take as strong a line as we can to prevent that. So the message from the police is we are here, we are available, we can deal with these problems. As I say, often for businesses, it's just a case that they have to engage with us, tell us what they're seeing, what's going wrong, be prepared to provide a statement, and we can use legislation which isn't going to negatively affect people in terms of fines or going to court or anything like that. It will be an order for those people to stop doing what they're doing, which is antisocial at those locations. So it's as low a level of outcome as we can do, but it is effective in solving problems.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. So I've got a question from a member of the audience, which is around whether or not all neighbourhood officers are back on the beat. So I don't know whether or not, so you're talking obviously about the city centre beat, but I don't know whether you know whether all our neighbourhood officers are back now.
The only people that aren't currently working on the beat are people with significant health issues who are having to socially isolate. So within the city centre, I've got 1 PCSO and 1 PC who are restricted to home working. Both are champing at the bit to come back and do their day job, but unfortunately the moment isn't safe for them. And for Outer Bath, I believe it's 1 PC and 1 PCSO as well. And offhand, I would think one PC at Keynsham. I'm not too sure at Radstock, but the vast majority of us are out and about doing our patrols.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Okay, right, I'm going to go to some of the questions that have been sent in. I'm going to go to two questions that are quite similar. One's from Ollie Sutton of the Beckford Bottle Shop, and the other is from Tim Perry. So the question, if I give you both the questions together, could the councillor please outline the relaxations to planning controls for outside seating? This is clearly both necessary for public safety and business viability, so some clarification would allow us to plan. And the second one, as I said, was from Tim Perry of the Raven, is has progress been made on a map of where the council plans to allow for outside areas for pubs? So I guess, Paul, maybe if you can make us a bit of a start on those two questions, please.
Yes, we are already coming up with a plan for where we can have outside seating, and we are moving at speed with that. There has been some debate this morning about which the streets should be included, and I think Allison, in her comment earlier on, referred to unintended consequences at one of the suggestions that was being talked about. So we're looking very closely at every street that we can put in areas for pubs and shops, and to do that. We can't just arbitrarily walk away from the law. So as a council, we are banned by legal restrictions, but we are looking at how we can be flexible with our licensing, how we can be flexible at the way we interpret and work with those laws. So we were doing as much as possible to make sure that the city centre, both in Bath and other shopping areas, are viable, and so that the pain that our businesses, both hospitality and retail, have been suffering starts easing as quickly as possible. And that's what I said earlier on. Our aim is, first of all, to get local people back who live, work or shop in the area, and then afterwards look about how we can start bringing back visitors to our area to sort of bring back some of that trade and that increased revenue. So we are looking very, very closely. We are working as fast as we can. There will be some contentious areas, and we're looking to come up with sensible solutions to meet all of those needs. But the answer is we want to do it as quickly as you want to do it, but we have to do it with due process.
Thank you, Paul. You may have noticed another member of the panel who I think was slightly delayed in getting here. So just at this moment, I'd like to introduce you to the Chief Executive of the Council, Will Godfrey, and it would be, perhaps it would be an opportune moment for him to add to what Councillor Crosley has just spoken of.
Thank you, Councillor Romero. Yeah, sorry, I had a couple of technical difficulties joining, so I do apologise for that. Yeah, just really to reiterate what Councillor Crosley was saying, I think everybody understands that we want to be as flexible as possible to encourage business to come back and to thrive as much as possible. But we do have such responsibilities. We're still awaiting guidance and updating legislation from central government, particularly around planning relaxation and areas of licensing, etc. And I think everybody wants to do what we can, but we have to act within the law. We have to make sure that we do those things properly. So I've been on a number of conversations this week with Department for Business, really pushing the fact that we need as much flexibility locally as possible, and encouraging them not to sort of set out guidance that's restrictive. But it's like anything, we put those points forward. We're still waiting for some of that detail to come through to us, and obviously as soon as it does, we will act appropriately to make sure that we can support business as much as possible. And I look forward to the rest of the conversation.
Thank you, Will. Okay. Allison, obviously your work is pretty much in the city centre, so I'm sure you have a view on this subject. Would you like to unmute yourself, Allison?
Yeah, no, sorry. Sorry, I was answering somebody's question. Could you just, while Will was introducing himself, are you talking about the tables and chairs issue?
That's absolutely, yes, thank you.
I was asked earlier if I knew of any other bids who had tackled it in a different way, and the only example I've come across is in Liverpool, where they've done a very ambitious project under the auspices of the mayoral authorities. That they've been given the bid in Liverpool. I've actually been given £450,000 to implement a scheme which is called Liverpool Without Walls, and I think that even the people who are responsible for the scheme in Liverpool would say it is not without risk, because if they do just throw away the rule book in the way that the kind of most excitable businesses might imagine, then the responsible authorities then, you know, lay themselves open to serious consequences, let's say. So I think what I'm hoping is that the government will notice what's happening in Liverpool, and the rest of us will benefit actually from their ambitious programme. So if the government see that, you know, Liverpool are pushing ahead, then it becomes worth their while in catching up and relaxing some of the regulations, so that just for this short period we can be a little bit more experimental with the way that we approach supporting businesses to have the number of customers that they need, but using the outdoor area as well. And so we'll continue to lobby and hope that, you know, that those sorts of things come forward. But in the meantime, I completely understand why the council has taken the view that it has, and obviously we just hope that we'll be able to use, because it's a great opportunity, more with fewer cars on the streets and less parking, but we can put much more fun things into the public realm, like tables and chairs and ice cream carts or whatever it might be, you know. So we can take hopefully some steps towards becoming like Vilnius, which everybody seems to want. So and I think would make Bath a much more attractive destination, which is good for everybody. So yes, we understand, but that's not going to stop us continuing to lobby, but we realise we've got to lobby at a higher level, so that's what we're doing.
Thank you very much, Alison. Okay, so the next question I've got actually, which fits within this area, is around the elimination of A-boards. So this is another question from Robin Kerr, and the question is as follows: as the retail economy begins to open up, there'll be a wish by shop owners to put out A-boards on the pavements to advertise their business. This must be, well, he says, this must be forbidden for several reasons, including the need for social distancing, and B, to avoid hindering the disabled, particularly the hard of sight, and says that there are plenty of other ways to advertise. I know this question also came up, or a comment like this also came up, I think, from Patrick Rotherham, which was in the sort of live question and answer piece as well. So perhaps I could come back to you, Alison, about A-boards, and then I'll perhaps ask Paul and Joanna for use as well. Alison.
So there is legislation around A-boards in the city centre, but actually I've already written to all the businesses who are our members, asking them to take a kind of civic responsibility line and accept that their A-boards might be the thing that makes it very difficult for people to navigate around the city. And there are particular streets like Northumberland Place, for example, where the streets are narrow anyway, and if you add A-boards into that mix, then there's no way we can maintain social distancing. And that's one of the reasons that the bid went for floor graphics, to help people, so that we could actually go to people and say, look, you know, you're using your A-boards to say queue here, why don't you have a sticker on the ground to say queue here? And, you know, try and actually be practical and helpful, rather than just saying no, don't do this. But you know, obviously we'll carry on, and I think that it's my understanding that, you know, we'll be able to actually go and personally talk to businesses in those streets where it's a particular issue, and obviously we'll support the council officers with that work. So
thank you, Alison. I don't know if Jonathon, if Sergeant Raisey wanted to comment at all on that issue?
Again, only just to say that we'd be more than happy to, if we see A boards around, to then go in to speak to the businesses and discourage. Obviously, we don't have legislation within criminal law to take action for those, but certainly to engage with those businesses and hope that they will see civic responsibility. So yeah, that'd be part of our patrols.
Thank you very much. Paul, does any other points you want to raise about A boards?
I think as a council, we've always been fairly relaxed about A boards, but I think under the new crisis with this health and safety, I think we have to be a bit firmer. And I really welcome the bid going around the shops and talking with people and supporting our enforcement officers. I think for the duration of this crisis, we're going to have to take a much firmer line on A boards, especially in the narrow streets where we need that space for people to be socially distanced. And I come back, our first priority is the health of everyone. And we certainly don't want to do anything that would lead to a further lockdown, which would be the most damaging outcome. So we want obstructions of any sort removed, which is why Joe is taking away so many parking spaces. And I think A boards are just another form of that. And I think, Allison's initiative with the bid to put in floor-based markings, I think is to be welcomed.
Okay, thank you very much. Actually, I'd now like to move on to, perhaps a little bit of discussion about what's needed outside of the city centre. So, maybe in our suburbs, in the towns, and perhaps in rural areas. I note that there's a couple of questions about this on the question and answer facility. So the first question is from Sue Hill, which is, will the bid be working in Radstock also to provide pavement guidance on social distancing? So obviously that's aimed at Allison to start with, but I'm sure there will be other join in the conversation there. So Allison, if you'd like to unmute.
So we have done a nice thing. So we had our rainbow stickers designed by a professional designer because we wanted only the best for Bath. But actually, because we've been working closely with the Public Realm team, they thought that it would be nice to use the same pavement graphics across the district. And so we've given permission for the license for that artwork to be used and adapted with the bid logo taken off. So you won't have Bath bid all over your regional smaller town centres, but it is my understanding that negotiation is going on, and something separate is being designed for businesses outside the city centre. I don't know the detail, but I know I gave my permission to use the designs.
Thank you very much, Alison. And I know this answer has already been given, but I think it is actually quite a useful one maybe to air more publicly, which is about planning to close Keynsham High Street as part of these measures, or as a suggestion that from Cheryl Scott, that is being considered. And I just wondered if Joanna would like to just make a comment on that.
So we really recognise at the moment that it has been very much Bath centric, and we recognise that North East Somerset clearly has some work to do in those areas. And because of just the sheer amount of work that has had to be done in a very short amount of time, we were, officers have focused on phase one. We recognise that there will be other phases to these pieces of work, and phase two will definitely be concentrating on North East Somerset, including Keynsham, Peasdown, St John, Radstock and Midsummer Norton, and we want to put in some changes in those areas. We are working at all times with ward councillors to make sure that what we deliver is what they think is wanted and needed in the area. So it's not just the officers going in and making those decisions. We are talking to those ward councillors because we realise that they know their areas well and therefore understand the needs that will help people to create social distancing spaces. So Keynsham is an area that we're looking at. I know that there are various questions around that, and as I literally left my emails this evening, I've been asked that question, and I don't want to give an answer to that because I know that's a piece of work that officers and I are still trying to make sure is in place because legally we can put that in place. And at the moment, we're not sure of the ramifications for Keynsham. So it is clearly something that we're looking at doing, but I don't want to say it is definitely in the mix, because I might be wrong, and I don't want everybody to go away thinking that's what's going to take place. Something is going to take place, but I just don't know what it is. And I would also like to just go back and say there's been a huge amount of work by officers in the last few months, under huge pressure of working from home, from Zoom, with having kids running around, and making sure that a lot of change is being put in place so that people can carry out safe social distancing. And I would like to take this moment to thank them for all their really hard and committed work in extraordinarily difficult circumstances. And we are endlessly reviewing and looking at the decisions we've made. We know that some people don't like them. We know some people do like them. We know that some people don't want them to stay. We know that some people want them to be implemented forever. So this is a huge area for re-evaluating what we do and how we do it, and trialling things. So we were certainly elected as a Liberal Democrat administration on a manifesto to bring in sustainable transport. And I do not want to use the word opportunity at any point, because thousands of people have died because of COVID-19. But we are in a situation where we can trial things and work out if there's a better way for all of us to move around our cities and our local spaces. And this is a difficult time for everybody, and it's a challenging time for everybody. But maybe this is the moment when we were used to not using the car, when we're used to hearing the birds sing, when we're used to walking to the local shops, that we take this opportunity to try out and trial new measures across the administration and see if they work. And I would hope that the community takes this moment to help us with that.
Thank you very much, Joanna. And I would also echo your thanks to all of our staff that have been working so very hard to put in place measures, you know, that should be helping everybody with social distancing, as well as being able to perhaps restart some parts of normal life. So you spoke about consulting with ward councillors, and I have another question which is from Councillor June Player, who is the ward councillor for Westmoreland. And the question is, will the council support local businesses if widening pavements and reducing parking spaces in local shopping areas affects business income due to reduction in footfall? I think that might be, you know, maybe Will would like to give us a bit of a start on that question.
Thanks, Leader. So, you know, the council's not a business bank in the sense that we can provide financial support. We can obviously, you know, we want to work with businesses to make sure that that we support local business as much as possible. But I think it's fair to say that our own financial position is pretty challenged as an organisation, and it's difficult to see how we would be able to provide direct financial support to business going forward. But obviously we want to work with people to see what the best way of actually supporting and sustaining business over what is a very difficult period. And, you know, we'll have conversations, but like I say, I think direct financial support is very difficult to deliver.
Thank you very much, Will. Okay.
Could I, Dina, could I suggest that one of the things is that people shop local? You know, we all live locally to shops. Those are the shops that we should go and support. I certainly know in the area I live in Lark Hall, the butcher, the greengrocer, the deli have played a magnificent part in maintaining everybody's lives in the last few months, to making sure that there was food in everybody's cupboards. And we should continue to support those shops, because if they hadn't have been here in the last few months, I don't know what many of us would have done. And I'm really, really grateful to those traders. So I do recognise quite wholeheartedly their concern about the measures that we are now putting in to widen pavements and take out parking, and they do feel that might be a loss of business to them. But what I would actually argue is that in an awful lot of places where they have done this before COVID-19, they've actually found that footfall is actually higher, that more people want to go to those spaces, and it actually has turned out to be the opposite. So I would urge everyone, shop local.
Thank you, Joanna. I don't think anybody could argue with that request. And I would just like to just add, if any business is struggling, you know, then please let us know. You know, we do operate an evidence-based process. So if you're really struggling, let us know and we'll see what is possible to be done to assist. Okay. I did questions pop up, which was around a blue badge holder, and I don't know where the question has now gone, but there was definitely a question about blue badge holders, and perhaps Joanna. Okay, so the question actually is from a disabled person who says it's hard to shop local if she can't park near the shops.
So, for instance, in Moreland Road, we've made sure that we've kept a disabled bay there. I certainly know in the new Oriel Hall car park, which is directly opposite the co-op in Lark Hall, there are 2 disabled bays there. I myself have a stepfather who's in a wheelchair, so I understand some of this problem of how people move around. We recognise that this is a problem, but we certainly know in all the car parks in the centre of Bath, there are large numbers of blue bay holding spaces there, and we're looking to increase Broad Street to be a better blue badge holder space. So although we have taken some spaces out, we are trying to make sure that we can put in other measures for them. And I am sorting out a meeting with the Royal National Institute for the Blind and the Disabled group to go for a walk around the city centre with them to look at the issues, to make sure that what we have in place enables people who are vulnerable and unable to move around in the best way possible.
Thank you. Okay, right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just have a quick glance through the questions that have come up during this conversation to see if there's anything else that we haven't covered. Oh, you'll be pleased to know, Joanna, you're doing a great job in an incredibly challenging time, from Simon Cale. So your work is obviously positively noted there. So a question from Ollie Sutton. I think he is of the Beckford Bottle Shop, which is about parking suspensions, and would the council consider business permits or some other measure of parking relaxations for those businesses that are offering delivery to customers? This is specifically for those based in the central zone.
Can I let Will Godfrey answer that one, please?
You may indeed, yes, of course. So, Will, over to you.
Yeah, look, you know, I think from our perspective, we want to listen to all ideas that are out there for us to try to make life easier for people. So, you know, we're not going to dismiss any idea, but equally, you know, we can't give commitments tonight until we actually work out what the practicality of those issues are. So let's take it away. Think about it and think whether or not that's a proposition that might work.
Okay, thank you. So, you know, and I know that we have a website that is still live, where people, if they've got any, you know, great ideas or any concerns, if they want to put them through to the website, which is bathnesslivable.streets.commonplace.is /. Obviously, we can make sure that website address is advertised, you know, when we put this out onto YouTube. For those of you who weren't aware, this is going to be put onto the council's channel. I'm not sure if that's happening right now or if that's going to happen shortly after this webinar is finished, but it will be, you'll be able to relive this, and for all those who weren't able to get in to the meeting, you'll have the opportunity to watch, and hopefully some of the questions you would have asked will be being answered there. So I see that we're, you know, running out of time now. We've only got about 4 more minutes left of this webinar. So what I'd like to do now is just to do a quick, you know, round the panel and just see if they've got any last words that they want to put forward. So if I start with Jonathon.
Yes, say for me, nothing particularly to add. We are here. We're there if anyone's got any problems or issues relating to access or anything like that. Then obviously call the police or speak to one PCSOs if she's around.
Thank you very much. Then I'd like to ask Allison for any last words.
Well, thank you very much. It's been an interesting discussion. I think there is going to be some very difficult times ahead for lots of businesses, and I'm looking forward to welcoming lots of our old favourites back onto, back into the city centre from Monday. And but I just want to reassure people that I think because we're dealing with sort of such temporary measures in uncertain times, that things aren't necessarily set in stone. And your point about an evidence-based assessment, if there are really strong reasons why something isn't working, then we'll be looking for that. We'll be looking for the hotspots where there are too many people in a space or no one's going in a space, and we will keep that under review, both from the bid perspective, our rangers out on the ground, and also working closely with your colleagues. So I think Joanna said, we don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but we'll keep watching and monitoring and improving.
Thank you, Alison. Okay, Paul, some last words from you?
Oh, thank you very much, Leader. The message I would like to give to everyone is that the council has been, and private contractors as well, we've been clearing away unprecedented levels of litter that have been left around since the lockdown started easing off. And what I would urge everyone is that our litter, it's no good saying our litter bins are overfull. We've got our teams out cleaning them the whole time and emptying them. But the volume of litter we're getting at the moment is just unbelievable and unprecedented. And what I would urge everyone is they start thinking, when they go out, take their litter back with them. Don't just leave it and think it's someone else's problem. Take your litter home with you, wherever you're going, whether it's into the city centre or out to one of our beauty spots or one of the parks in the city centre. Please take your own litter home with you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Joanna.
So I think I'd like to there was a question up there about speed, and I'd like to sort of mention that speed is a really important thing at the moment. How people drive around is really important. So if you can slow your speed down because somebody might be stepping out onto a pavement because they're social distancing, or because a parent is cycling with small children to take them to somewhere, then please slow your speed. So this is not an attack on cars in any kind of a way. Lots of people do need to use cars. They're really valuable objects that carry lots of people and take heavy shopping, etc. But they can be reduced in the movement and how fast they get around our urban spaces particularly. And if we are now all having to share that urban space in a new way, I would really ask people to just consider how fast they are driving and the implications of that speed will mean to somebody else who might be stepping into the road or cycling. And lots of young children for the first time have been cycling around our city. Let's continue to encourage them and give them that opportunity. So stay within the speed limit, please.
Thank you, Joanna. Will, some very short words from you, hopefully?
Yeah, just 3 words for me, which is really about, for me, it's about patience, understanding and flexibility. We've got some real challenges ahead. We need to work together. I'm sure if we do that, then, we can sustain and bring back the economy, but it's going to, it is going to be difficult, and we need patience, understanding, and flexibility.
Thank you, Will. And from Bruce, from Dr. Laurence.
Well, very briefly, I think the interests of health and public health and business are completely intertwined. They're not in opposition. Health is important for being able to go forward against lockdown, and good businesses are important for people's health in so many ways. So let's see them as the same thing, but the link to make them both optimal is to be really careful, really take the rules and regulations and your personal behaviour seriously, and then it can work out.
Thank you very much. I think the final message must be that, we all have a part to play, and we must play this part properly with this sort of reference to other people. We don't just live and exist in absolute isolation. and obviously when our high streets come back to life, you know, that will be much more apparent. So firstly, or rather lastly, I'd like to thank all of the panel for being here, for your insights and your comments, and also for answering some of the questions that have been coming, you know, through the chat, you know, so we've actually had a bit of a running commentary through that avenue too. So thank you to the panel, and also thank you very much to the audience for your questions and observations as well. It's been really helpful, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon. So thank you, and good evening.
Are we out now? Is that over?